Welcome back to the 20 Slams of Christmas, Coffee Break Tennis's own version of tennis history. Why do we only cover Roger Federer's accomplishments during the Christmas season when there is no real tennis on TV, you may ask? That's because it's my show, and I have to cover something I'm going to be interested in, especially if I'm going to work on Christmas.
Già, perché lo stesso sponsor di Serena.
No. Yesterday, Christmas Eve, we left off with Roger Federer losing. Despite everyone thinking he had a real chance to win 4 majors in a row, many people thinking he had a real chance to win all 4 in 2007, he loses to Rafa Nadal. Citing fatigue and maybe a little bit of sadness, a little shock, disappointment, Roger Federer pulls out where he had already won. Let me read this to make sure it's correct. 4 years in a row, Roger had already won. In Halle, where he's now won 10 total, he had a chance to win 5 in a row. But worrying about getting injured, Roger Federer pulls out, and for the first time in his career, he will go to Wimbledon in 2007 without having a grass court tune-up tournament to get ready. But it doesn't matter that much. Roger goes all the way to the Wimbledon final, just like he had just done in his last tournament at the French Open, only dropping 1 single set. And just like at his last tournament at the French Open, he faces in the final world number 2, Rafa Nadal. Again, he had also played Rafa Nadal the previous year, 2006, in the Wimbledon final. Now, in that match, and before we talk about that match, I should point out one noteworthy opponent. A little bit of tennis history for you. The first time Roger Federer and Juan Martín del Potro face off in the second round, I believe it is. Yes, the second round, first ever career meeting between Roger and Del Po, 2007 Wimbledon.
Vedi, questo back qui è micidiale qua sopra. Sulla terra invece
anche questo rovescio lungolinea.
Sì.
The previous year, 2006 Wimbledon final, Roger had given a bagel to Rafa Nadal. This match is a lot more competitive 2007, and of course we all know what happens in 2008. And this match is the first time in Federer's career, keep in mind he has 10 majors, 11 after winning this match against Rafa. Out of 11 majors, this is the first time Roger in a major final is forced to go 5 sets. Rafa is starting to become a real problem, a real threat to Roger. Think about how we just had the battle of the surfaces. We talked about it in the last video. It was a weird match where half the court was clay, half the court was grass. And part of the reason why they did this, obviously, it was a cool exhibition. I'm sure it made some money. It was a fun idea. But part of the reason in the marketing why they said they did this was to truly determine who was the greatest player, since you couldn't figure it out playing on clay because Rafa would win. And both of these guys, Rafa had been undefeated for 3 years on clay. Roger undefeated on grass for 5 years at this point in history. Both of these guys are unbeatable on their surfaces. That's why we had this weird battle of the surfaces exhibition match as part of the marketing, why they said that. Here, everyone's starting to notice Rafa's getting closer on grass, whereas Roger, it was a competitive match, but it was 4 sets that didn't feel quite as close as this Wimbledon match. So something to take away from 2007. Rafa getting closer where Roger Federer has to win to maintain number 1, and that's Wimbledon. From there, we go to the U.S. Hardcourt series, the summer Hardcourts. Roger goes to Canada. He had just won the previous year in Toronto. Now it's in Montreal. As we all tennis fans know, Canada Masters tennis every year switches between Montreal and Toronto. Roger Federer has never won in Montreal, but he should have won in this year. He had already won in Toronto the year before, The year before that, he didn't win in Montreal, but the year before that, when it was in Toronto again, he had won then. He had 2 of these things. He comes in with all this winning Wimbledon, winning so much on hard courts, and everyone thinks he's going to win in Montreal. But another young rival will come and ruin a little bit of tennis history for Roger Federer. And this guy, he's not named Nadal. He's named Novak.
Brilliant. Great anticipation.
Something Federer did a lot back then, doesn't drop a set en route to the final of the Canada Masters Hardcourt tournament. And now Djokovic, who has won Miami, by the way. Did we mention that in the last video? I talked about how it was my first trip ever, and I was so disappointed that Federer wasn't there. But I did have fun watching Novak Djokovic with my finals ticket. And I also thought it was kind of cool that me and him were about the same age. I was thinking, hey, I'm 20 and I'm up here watching this match, and he's 19 and he's down there winning it. So I thought that was kind of cool. I'll never forget that. So Djokovic now, with wins like Miami, is 4 in the world. We're already starting to get to the big 4. And Roger has never lost to him at this point. He has a 4 wins to 0 losses record over Novak Djokovic. But remember how I've said that tiebreaks were something of importance. Roger Federer loses both tiebreaks when, after losing to Guillermo Cañas in Indian Wells, he wants the revenge so badly in Miami, but he loses the 2 tiebreakers despite it being a very close match. Again, the same exact score. Roger Federer loses to Novak Djokovic in the final in Canada, 7-6, winning the second set pretty easily, 6-2, and then losing again, 7-6. What is most noteworthy about this match, and frustrating for Federer, who we talked about in the last video, had said he wasn't that impressed with Djokovic after brushing him aside at the Australian Open. This year, Roger Federer had some comments at the time were maybe a little controversial. I didn't think so. Roger basically said, look, these young guys, which is kind of funny. He's talking about these young up-and-coming guys all the way back in 2007. 13 years later, Roger's still talking about these young guys that have nothing to lose and go for their shots. It's basically what he said about his loss to Djokovic, and Roger was very upset about the most noteworthy thing in this match. He served for the first set up 40-love on his own serve for the set. 40-love, and ends up losing in a tiebreak. This will come up again. Tiebreaks are a recurring theme in this year, and we're going to have another moment where somebody blows it serving up 40-love in the first set, but we'll get to that a little bit later in today's video.
There's some of that youth and exuberance. Oh, yeah. Federer dropping the ball way too short. Terrific stuff from both.
Roger Federer goes to Cincinnati, the Hardcourt Masters tournament, just before the U.S. Open, and wins it, beating a little bit of a beatdown over James Blake in the final. And then Darth Federer is born. With this racket, dressed in all black, for the first time, we start hearing the term Darth Federer. The 2007 U.S. Open is where it all started. It's where they started playing the Star Wars Imperial theme music as Federer walked out. And after Roger won in the final, they played it one more time to honor the champion, Darth Federer, of the 2007 U.S. Open. In the quarterfinals, Roger Federer will beat Andy Roddick. This is noteworthy because it's a rematch of the final the year before and because it features 2 tiebreaks. Roger wins 7-6, 7-6, 6-4. I told you 2 tiebreaks would be a thing in big matches. That's the quarterfinal.
Well, all credit to Roddick. He's done absolutely the right thing there, but what can you do about that?
Oh, and he just touched it off the net court as well. I mean, can he hit it any harder?
Both players have come to play.
I didn't write it down here, but I believe in the semifinals, it's Nikolai Davydenko, who made a lot of semifinals back then, was very consistent player, but not enough firepower to take out Roger Federer when he's playing well. In the final, Novak Djokovic is in his first ever major final. And 2 tiebreakers comes up again, and Roger Federer wins again, almost the same score as he did over Roddick, 7-6, 7-6, 6-4 over Djokovic. What is most noteworthy is Novak Djokovic is up 40-love serving for the first set, and Roger Federer saves all of those set points and ends up winning in a tiebreaker. I mean, how sweet is that for revenge? It's cool to win a Masters tournament in Canada. It's much cooler to do it right back to you at the U.S. Open in the final.
Caught the line. On set point, Federer feathers one right on the sideline. 16 bounces. On the baseline. And it's long. Federer fights off. 3-set point. Great return.
It's as if it's like a great doubles return. He just blocks it back. He uses his opponent's pace so well. How many times have you seen that off? Now he knows what it's like to be in a Grand Slam final. Just in this tiebreak, it appears, and it's really made it tricky for the
And Federer arrives at 3-set points of his own. And the double fall gives the #1 player in the world, Roger Federer, the opening set. 2 double faults. Oh, my.
After Federer wins, take a listen to this quote. This is from 13 years ago. Think about that. Sounds a lot like the stuff you hear Federer saying today, even though it's about totally different players who are much younger than Djokovic. New guys challenging me, this is my biggest motivation out there. Seeing them challenging me and then beating them in the finals. So there you go. He wasn't shy about it. Challenge me in Canada, I beat you in the finals of a tournament that actually matters.
3 sets to love, 7-6, 7-6.
Champion again, Roger Federer. Second most major titles, tying Roy Emerson in tennis history. He knows he has survived a tough fight from the 20-year-old Serbian phenom, who had 2 chances to win the first 2 sets and take a lead. 5-set points first set, 2-set points second set. Couldn't deliver. Federer denies and has earned.
Noteworthy statistic from tennis history: after winning the U.S. Open, Roger Federer becomes the only player in history, still to this day, to win 3 majors in a single year 3 times. Of course, they are 2004, 2006, 2007, and now Roger Federer has been in 10 consecutive Grand Slam finals, losing only to Nadal during that streak of 10 finals in a row, and of course, both at the French Open. So there you go. 2008, it will change a little, and it will be a little revenge for this guy who was kind of humiliated, I'm sure, after having the 40-love lead serving for the first set. Let's just wrap things up by talking about what happened. We've covered all the Grand Slams of 2007, but there was some more interesting stuff to happen in that year. In Madrid, back then, Madrid was a fast indoor court that they played after the U.S. Open. History is made again, but not Roger Federer history. Despite going to the final without dropping a set, something Federer did a lot back then, David Nalbandian, who has been a nemesis to Roger here and there. Maybe some would say not mentally tough enough to always challenge, never won a freaking major. But some big wins over Roger Federer at some big tournaments that were not majors. Nalbandian does it again, and he beats Nadal, Djokovic, Federer back to back to back. One of the most impressive accomplishments in all of tennis history. It was 2007 in Madrid, just after the U.S. Open. But one big positive for Roger Federer is a little bit of revenge in Madrid. Take a look at Roger Federer's round of 16 against, you guessed it, Vamos Willie, Guillermo Cañas. Roger beats him 6-0, 6-3 to get some very sweet revenge.
He is proving a handful today. 5 games to the good. Over and out it goes. Giving nothing away emotionally-wise on his face, but you bet he's happy. You better believe it. 6-love.
From there, Roger Federer goes to his hometown, Basel, Switzerland, takes out a young Del Potro in the round of 16, and wins his second title in Basel. Of course, now he's got 10 of them, a Fedesima now.
Lob? No. Che punto, bellissimo.
He'll lose to David Nalbandian one more time in the last Masters tournament of the year, Paris Masters in straight sets. We should note that Nalbandian will go on to win this tournament and beat Nadal in the final. He does not beat Djokovic because Djokovic loses in his first match in Paris-Bercy that year, 2007. I don't know why I keep saying it. Everyone by now, I'm sure, knows we're talking about 2007 here. He loses to Fabrice Santoro, the magician of tennis. I hope you remember him. If you don't, look him up now. Search him on YouTube and watch some of his highlights. Andy Murray beats Fabrice Santoro and maybe would have played Nalbandian to make it another beating 3 of the big 4 in one tournament special for David Nalbandian. But Murray ends up losing to Richard Gasquet in the quarterfinals, who Nalbandian beats easily in the semifinals. Of course, there is one more tournament in 2007 that comes after Paris-Bercy, and there's a little bit of tennis history that happens there. Now, Roger Federer finishes 2007 on a great note, winning what is now the ATP Finals, was the ATP World Tour Finals, and back then was the Tennis Masters Cup, where you have the best 8 players of the year playing in a round-robin stage before you go into a Final Four elimination-style tournament. And Roger loses his first ever to Fernando Gonzalez, the guy he kicked the thing off with, beating him in the Australian Open final to start the year. He ends the year by losing his first ever group stage match, the first one at the Tennis Masters Cup this year, against Fernando Gonzalez. But then he goes on to destroy Nikolai Davydenko and Andy Roddick in group stage matches. He qualifies, faces Rafa Nadal, taking advantage of the chance to play him on a faster indoor court, crushes him. It's in Shanghai this year, by the way. Crushes Nadal, and then, more tennis history for you, and the last thing we'll say on today's show, the last time we ever saw a Masters tournament with a best-of-5 sets final. They used to do that back then. I was lucky enough to see one of the last ones in Miami that year when I saw Cañas lose to Djokovic. Who was it in the final after crushing Nadal? 6-4, 6-1, by the way. David Ferrer, 6-2, 6-3, 6-2, the last ever best-of-5 match at a Masters tournament in tennis history. Thank you. Hit the music. Thank you for watching 20 Slams of Christmas, and we wish you a very, very Merry Christmas. We are very thankful for you here at Coffee Break Tennis, and we are very excited to see you again in the new year. Of course, the Australian Open is coming up. How exciting is that? I want to give a very big shout out and special thank you to the patron saints of Coffee Break Tennis, who without you, we couldn't do stuff like this, especially. We couldn't do the show without you, but we definitely couldn't be doing stuff in the off season like this. It takes a lot of time to do all this research. You know, I remember a lot of tennis history, but I don't remember everything. A lot of time and work went into this. I hope you enjoyed it. Have a very, very Merry Christmas, and we will see you again before the end of the year with the Coffee Break Tennis Awards, inspired by Damian Byrne, one of our great patron saints. We will give out some Coffee Break Tennis Best of 2019 awards, and we will highlight some of my favorite moments of the 2019 tennis season. Merry Christmas, and see ya. Gotta say it nicely on Christmas.